Welcome to the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. This is episode 27, part 2 of our top 30 games of all time. My name is Tyler.
Hello, this is Kevin.
This is Tyson.
In this episode, we're going to continue on with our top 20 through 11 games of all time.
Getting to some good ones.
I mean, they're all good. It's top 30.
That's true.
Yeah.
We're getting some better ones.
Yeah, we're getting some better ones. And this isn't going to follow our traditional episode format where we do a feature review or we talk about the games that we've been playing lately and then do our top 5, 10 lists. We're just going to jump right into the top 10 lists.
We got a lot of games to talk about.
We do.
30 games. That's got a lot to get through.
And part 1 was lengthy. We didn't have a lot of crossover, so...
Which is interesting, right? Like, we play a lot of games together, and not having very much crossovers is kind of cool. There's just so many good games out there.
There is going to be a little bit more crossover in part 2, but not a ton.
Right.
I was surprised by this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about that is, for me, looking at either of your lists, they're all games that I really enjoy.
Yep.
And
for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy.
There's a few in there. I mean, I don't know.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, you mean they're great?
Oh, yeah. Right. No, they're all great. So should we jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I'll kick it off with my number 20. This is a game that's already been referenced. It made Tyler's list. This is Wonders Duel. I'm not going to talk about really how this game plays. Go listen to our last episode, and you can figure out how it plays a little bit. But I just love the fact that this is a 2-player drafting game that creates so many amazing choices and decisions to make. And the fact that it's a drafting game for 2 players is crazy that they pulled it off so well. There's, the push and pull of trying to get a military victory versus a scientific victory, which is really cool. You see the other player trying to do that and you have to counter that and try and stop it. Or just, going for straight points and playing to the end of the game. It's super fun, a lot of hard, agonizing decisions, and a lot of times it comes to one card flip to win the game or to lose the game. And that's always an exciting moment. So this one's on BGA. Haven't played it a lot recently, but there was a stretch there where we were playing it
nonstop.
A lot. Nonstop.
Yeah.
We always had a game going. And they've got an expansion on there that I haven't explored yet, but great game. Well deserving of my number 20 spot, and that's Wonders Duel.
I will say, and I don't know that I mentioned this in the last episode, it's very rare that it's a lopsided game. It's almost always neck and neck. There's been a couple times where one of us has gone for military or scientific victory, failed or came up short of that, and then just got blown away in points.
Yeah, it's like all your eggs were in that basket, right?
But aside from that, it's usually a really close, down to the last couple cards type game. And
it's a very balanced game that has multiple paths to victory. Just very well designed. So that's my number 20, Wonders Duel.
So my number 20 is a game that is very new to any of my lists because it's a relatively new game in general. And it's one that I've only played a couple times. So some of this here may be some of the hype of playing it so recently, but I think it's deserving of its spot. The game I'm talking about is Wonderland's War. Wonderland's War is a game in which you are taking on the role of a Wonderlandian, one of the characters from Lewis Carroll's novel Alice in Wonderland. You can be Alice, the Mad Hatter, the Queen of Hearts. You can be the Cheshire Cat, or you can be the Jabberwock. And there's all of these characters you can be. And what it does is it adds a push your luck mechanic to an area control type of game, in the sense of we're talking about a combination of almost Quacks of Quedlinburg bag building.
this is the one that was supposed to be better than Quacks. Is that what it is?
This to me is a better experience for me than Quacks for sure. But it takes that bag building experience of Quacks and then combines it, I think, with more of an area control style game like Blood Rage, and puts those two together, and it has a card drafting phase within it as well, and it adds all these mechanics in, and you're vying for control of Wonderland. And there's a lot going on. I won't go into too much depth about exactly how the game works. I think we'll probably end up talking about this game a little bit more down the road, but I like this game a lot. I think it offers a lot. I will say that of the games I've played, I've won up to this point, so that may be coloring my experience.
I mean, I lost and I had a blast playing it. I've only played once, but I loved it. It was a lot of fun. So,
and I do imagine that there is potential for this to, in the right circumstances, for this to fall down and not be as high up on my list, because I think in this game there is a potential for some luck dominant kind of experiences that could really sour your play potentially.
Like Quacks?
Whoa. Yes, but I'm gonna let
I can
Kevin
confirm.
address
I can
this.
confirm that. Yeah. So this game suffers from most bag builders can have this problem, right? That you can just get a string of bad luck through no fault of your own other than picking the wrong tiles. And it kind of sets you back in the game. So I had an experience like that. It's interesting because the first time I played, I did not have that experience, and it was super exciting. And it was one of those we were like cheering, and it was just a crazy fun experience. Like we had some wars that we had that were just right down to the wire. If you get to a certain part of the track, 25, then you automatically win. And there's a few times where we're right up there, and it's like you draw the right tile and you jump to the front, and it's like, yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and the reveal of that chip at the same time, you're interested and invested in seeing what your chip is, as well as interested and invested in seeing what somebody else's chip is.
And it's exciting. On the flip side, when you reveal and it's a black chip every time, it's a punch in the gut and it sucks. And it can take the wind out of your sails a little bit. So, I have a love-hate relationship.
I will say though that that's similar to like a deck building mechanic, right? Like bag building and deck building are kind of,
it's just another form of
together on BGG is the same.
It's another form of randomization.
But here's the thing though, I think that most deck builders don't do that a number of bag builders do. Orleans doesn't do this, and this is why I think Orleans is potentially the best bag builder out there. But the reason I think is because games like Quacks or Wonderland's War, they have those black chips, or they have the white chip in Quacks that will blow you up, right? And because of that, it's not in your own control necessarily. You cannot really mitigate that. There is minor ways to mitigate it.
You can draw multiple tiles and choose,
but there is a potential for that. So as opposed to a deck builder where you don't typically in most deck builder put cards in your deck that like blow you up. Even in
Lost Ruins Arnak, you draw the fear card.
But the fear
curse cards in Dominion. Curse cards in Dominion are just
curse are bad, yeah. But fear cards in Arnak have a purpose. You can use the foot icon to be able to do something with them. But when a game has a chip or a card that is solely going to contribute, like there's nothing but bad that can come of it, and your best option is to reshuffle it in, like that doesn't really change anything.
I think you're still playing a game of probability of what do you put into your bag, right?
Agreed.
And Kevin in that particular game started out, everybody gets a black chip at the end of each round, and Kevin got the
extra one,
the extra one,
and I don't
for the whole game I did.
I don't know if you bought, so you're taking cards that give you rewards with your character you're moving around the table. And one of those rewards is additional chips. I don't know if you got additional chips in the first round that were colors in your favor, but that would be one way of increasing the probability of you drawing better chips, right?
And it is a probability thing, but there's still the chance that you just have sucky luck.
Right.
And but it's not even just, there's also the dice roll for how much, what's the
shards. The
shards that you
get.
take on, which then determines who gets the extra chip each round. And that's painful. Like if you roll just one bad roll, and then all of a sudden you're in the lead for getting the extra chip. That stinks.
Yeah, and there wasn't enough ways, at least in the 2 times that we've played, to cull your deck. You can't really it's very difficult to get rid of those black chips.
Yeah,
there's a few ways to do it, but it's like pretty far along in the game.
They're very rare.
And it's very rare.
Yeah.
So, what I like about Dominion, we mentioned that before, is that there usually is a lot of ways to cull your deck, and you can get it exactly how you want it later on in the game. This didn't quite feel like you could do that as much.
No, and I could see that. But for me, the reason I think this is number 20 is because this is my style of game. I love area control games, and I love bag building. Even though it has some potential for luck to come into play here and really determine your outcome, I've yet to have that experience personally, and every play I've played of it is exciting. I love the reveal. It creates moments, and for me, moments are a big part of games, and every game I've played has had moments of those reveals. It's those stand-up moments where I'm on the edge of my seat. I got to see what happens. I love that, and I think this game does it really well. And so that's why, for me, Wonderland's War is number 20.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think those moments are possible in this game just because of the push your luck, and it's pretty cool when it goes in your favor. It's pretty awesome.
So my number 20 is actually a pandemic game, and it is Fall of Rome. And I know at least a couple of us kind of approached Pandemic a little bit differently in our top 30 list. I chose to leave Pandemic Legacy off the list.
I chose to leave Pandemic period off the list.
So there you go.
Shocker.
So, and Kevin, you'll find out in a minute, approached it a little bit differently as well. I just felt like Pandemic Legacy 1 and 2 are absolutely amazing. I'm only partway through season 0 with my family. I just wanted to keep games on my list that were like, hey, this is not a legacy game. This is a game I can play anytime I want to. These are my top 30 games that I can play anytime I want to. So this is my favorite non-season Pandemic game. It's Pandemic Fall of Rome. And in this game, you are trying to defend Rome and most of Europe from invading barbarians. But I love how this game does the infect stage in a Pandemic game where you draw cards and then, you add cubes to the board and could cause an outbreak in regular vanilla Pandemic or many other versions. In this version of the game, there's predefined paths for each barbarian horde or each barbarian color. So when they infect, they move closer along that path towards Rome. And if they get to Rome and sack Rome, you lose. But I really enjoy how different that is from vanilla Pandemic. I love the art style. I have very rarely won this game. I like that it's a little more challenging, I feel like. You can battle the barbarians and you roll a dice and you can convert the barbarians to your side. There's just some different things that this Pandemic game does that's a little above and beyond some of the other Pandemic games that I've played. I've said before, my wife loves Pandemic. She'll play any Pandemic game. This one is my favorite, and anytime Pandemic is suggested, this is the first one that I suggest. So it's my number 20, Pandemic Fall of Rome.
I said at the start of this episode that there were pretty much no games on these lists that I
Have you played this one though?
I don't love Pandemic, but of the Pandemics, the way that you explained the mechanic going to Rome and preventing that does sound different. And I have to admit that Pandemic as a system, like, it's a really clever design. Like, it does a really good job at it. I just personally,
but you haven't played this one.
Like this. No, I have not played this one.
This one does. I played it one time, and it was completely different than any other Pandemic that I played, it was a fresh experience. And it took a little bit for us to get into it and wrap our heads around it because it was so different.
It is, yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and it was an interesting, fun puzzle to try and figure out. So I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and I've played the Cthulhu one. I've played the World of Warcraft one. I haven't played the new Star Wars one, but yeah, this one's my favorite of the non-season pandemics. That's my number 20, Pandemic Fall of Rome.
So my number 19 is a game designed by Hjalmar Hawk and Lorenzo Silva, with the publisher being Horrible Guild. And this is Railroad Inc. So Railroad Inc. is a roll and write. We know how much Tyler likes to write. Am I right?
Yeah, but luckily most of my plays of this are on BGA.
That is true. This has a great BGA.
No erasing.
Implementation. Railroad Inc. is you're building routes. There's a board that's laid out in a grid shape, and there are certain exits on the board. Either it's a road or it's a railroad that's an exit. And on your turn, you're going to roll 4 dice. And you're going to draw those dice on the board. And the whole goal is you're trying to connect exits together. The more you connect together in a continuous grid, you're going to get more points for that. There's also 9 squares in the middle that you'll get bonus points if you build squares in the middle. There's expansions that completely change up the game. You can play with lava. You can play with meteors. There's recently a Kickstarter that came out that added a ton of different expansions, little 2 dice expansions. There's a yellow version. There's a green version. But that's really all you're trying to do is that you play over a number of rounds. Usually it's 6 or 7. If you play with certain expansions, it's 6. If other expansions are 7 rounds. But depending on how you build and how you connect is how you're going to score. You get points for your longest road. You get points for your longest railroad. You also get minus points for open connections, which can be, depending on how you roll, you can have a lot of open connections or you can have not many open connections. You get to the point, you get to the end, whoever has the most points wins. What I love about this game is you're going off of the same dice. Everybody's going off of the same dice. The end result of what people draw is vastly different, right? How people think about this game is different. There's, usually the scores end up being fairly close. And a lot of times there's ties, but the process of getting to the end and how people think about it and how it's so different is it's fascinating to me and it's a lot of fun. So
I just talked about how Wonderland's War may suffer from me having won, so I like it because of that. This game, Railroad Inc., does not have that problem.
But you've won before, right?
I have won,
and recently, didn't you?
I've won a handful of times, but I've played
double-digit percentage wins?
I don't think so. I think I've played 50 games, and maybe 10%. That's what I'm winning.
Did you fully understand the rules?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Well, mostly it depends on the version I'm playing.
Yeah, right.
I've found that in this game, I do really well, and I'm in the lead quite regularly the first few rounds of the game, and then the last couple of rounds, it just, for whatever reason, I set something up, and then the rolls don't work out for me, and I end up being terribly positioned, and I get a horrible score. I can't, I'll stop. The last round, I won't get any points, and then everybody's goes right past me, and it's frequent that happens. But I love it. I think it's a great game.
Yeah, and you can play where you can set yourself up for, play the odds, right? And you can set yourself up to be more successful. But still, there's the chance that the roll does not work out and you get nothing and you have open connections everywhere and it just doesn't work out. But then on the flip side, I've played games where it's almost a perfect board. Yeah. And there's
those are awesome.
There's 1 or 2 open connections. I've connected everything. I have this lava field that's beautiful in the middle,
Well, and that's a big thing too, is being able to close it off at the end. Your main lava field when you play that expansion.
And it's exciting when you get that roll at the end that you need.
Yeah.
A little deflating when you don't, but it's exciting.
I think that's part of my problem is that I tend to sacrifice the correct move, the most point advantageous move, for the most aesthetic move sometimes.
You're ooh, pretty.
That makes sense. I would plan my road to go this way and my railroad to go this way, and it makes more sense to do this. So maybe I should play less aesthetically.
I like playing this on the table, but this is one game that I just absolutely love more on BGA, just because there's no erasing. You don't have to write in the numbers to track which round you filled in a space. If you change your mind and need to erase it, it is such a nice design and perfect for Board Game Arena. And we'll go in spurts where we will play 7 or 8 games back to back, and I love it. And just we'll switch between different expansions, and it's so fun. It's such a good game.
I agree. I love it as well, and that's why it's my number 19, Railroad Inc.
So my number 19 game is, again, a game that I have not played very much at all, but it's one we've talked about. We talked about this one in episode 23, so I won't go too heavy in it. If you want more of our opinions specifically on that, it was what we were playing at that point in time in episode 23. But this is Bitoku. Bitoku is designed by German P. Milan, and the solo design is done by both Xavi Bordes Aymeric and David Turchi. And then it's published by Devere Game. And Devere's been doing a lot of really good things lately, and I'm excited by what they're putting out. But Bitoku, as we talked about when we mentioned this in episode 23, is a game that at first glance is incredibly intimidating because of the iconography, and the board is very busy. It's beautiful. Like, it's gorgeous artwork. The art is done by Edu Valls, and it is gorgeous, and I love what I saw the first time I saw it, but I was like, oh, that might just be a lot more to deal with than I want to deal with. But as soon as I got it played, it clicked. It was very quick to understand. Within a round or two, I was going and making decisions, and there's so much going on in this game that I can't really describe essentially what it is. But what I love about this game is that there is so many options for you to go do different things. You can make choices to put dice in different areas and block people off. There's a little bit of a take that, but not in a really mean way. But that's something that I enjoy, is that direct interaction of players. And for a heavier Euro, this game has more than most would, I think, but it doesn't feel out of place in this game. Another thing that I really like about this game is that there are ways that you can really expand your own individual board and do something unique compared to what other people are doing. You can collect different cards that do different things and play in a different strategy than anybody else that I find really entertaining and exciting. And there is so much to come back to, that every experience you're going to have with this game is going to be different. So this is a game that I'm really excited to learn more about and play more often, but I haven't gotten it played as much as I'd like. So we'll see how this fares in years to come on my top 30. But it's one that right now I'm very excited about. That's Bitoku.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this game. There's so much to explore. We played it one time, and I loved the play. I thought it was amazing. So I'm looking forward to exploring this one more as well. So we need more copies of it in the group, don't you think?
Well, so I love
Tyler?
it. I was going to buy it, but then I was like, you know what? Ben has it. I don't need to buy it. But it's an awesome game. It's not one that I could see playing with my family.
Yeah.
And for that reason, Ben having a copy, I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's definitely one we need to get to the table more. It sounds like all my favorite games so far on this list are Ben's copies, and he's the one that I need to be playing more with.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, so my number 19 is actually in following suit with Tyson.
Can we just skip this one?
No, you can't. So apparently it's not on Kevin's list, which is not really a surprise. If you listen to our train episode all the way back in, it was episode number 5. So going back to that episode, you can hear our discussion and thoughts on Imperial Steam. This game is designed by Alexander Humer, and the artist is Andreas Resch, and it's published by Capstone Games. It is a 2-4 economic train Euro game that is absolutely amazing. When we played this game, And we've only played it once because some people didn't enjoy it as much as others, and we haven't gotten it back to the table. This game, when we played it, I was like, it was January, and I was like, this is going to be my top game in 2022. Top new game to me. I don't know if that still holds true, but it's definitely up there. I absolutely love this game. It is by far the most complex game on my list of top 30 games of all time. Basically, everybody starts out at the top of the board in Vienna, and one of the goals of the game is to try to make it to build your rail network to Trieste, which is on the bottom part of the map. You're trying to build your railroad network there. Along the way, you're building factories, you're upgrading trains, borrowing money, taking contracts, gaining influence, manipulating your stock price. There are a lot of different things going on in this game. What I love about this game is it's very tight and very unforgiving, and the decisions are very difficult. And
you just described a chore.
But here's the payoff is when you get things to work, and when you guys talk about in Lost Ruins of Arnak being able to, you flip over the Guardian or whatever, and how am I going to get rid of this guy? And then you do a couple turns and somehow find a way to get the resources. It's the same type of thing. Like for me in Imperial Steam, like how the heck am I going to do this? Because it's one of those games where you never feel like you have enough resources and don't have the capability to do what you want to do. But when you actually figure out a way to do it and you pull it off, it is so rewarding. I love it. Has a very interesting end game scoring too. If nobody makes it to Trieste, then none of the contracts are scored that have been accumulated over the course of the game. So there's some decisions there like, hey, if I could make it to Trieste, but if I don't, then Tyson's not going to score his $300 contract that is going to be a huge gift to him, even though he's not going to make it to Trieste. And if I do, he has to pay me to get his goods there and his contract there at the end of the game for the extra legs that separate where he got to on the map and Trieste. So different scoring at the end, if anybody makes it to Trieste or not. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I love the color palette. The iconography is awesome. I instantly fell in love with this game. If any game on my list out of my top 30, this is the one that I would play immediately given the chance over any other game on my list, just to get it to the table again and just to experience it. I love it. It's awesome. And it's not a train game like the Iron Rail series or Railways or an 18XX type train game. It's not really a train game. It's more of a economic Euro game, but it was by far my favorite game that we talked about in that episode.
Yeah. Interesting end game scoring is a interesting way to put it, I guess. What is crazy about this game is the disparity in scores that don't necessarily reflect how you've played the game, right?
Yep.
That just was, and it's really deflating when you score 100 points and somebody scores 900,
right,
or whatever the scoring ends up to be, right? It was just, whoa, that's kind of weird. So it fell a little flat for me, but I see the design and how the design is well done, and it is a beautiful game. That board is awesome. But
I want to play it again. I want to give it another shot. I liked my experience. I didn't love my experience, but I will say about this game, I don't think there's ever been any other game, maybe Great Western Trail, but no. I don't think there's ever been any other game that I've played that has made me feel like I don't know how to play board games as much as this game, based solely on that end game scoring, because looking at it, I was like,
I'm some kind of dummy.
Yeah.
Well, and
it just made me feel stupid.
From what I remember, I think Ben was the only one that got to Trieste. I might have gotten there, but if he hadn't have got there, we wouldn't have scored all our contracts, and it would have been a completely different scoring I don't know who would have won. I'm not.
Which is kind of a weird design decision.
In my
mind.
It makes it such an interesting decision. Like, oh, Kevin or Tyson's loading up on the contracts. I only have one. I'm not going to try and get there.
I do agree that it does make it more interesting, but like, again, like that disparity in that points is just what makes me feel like what was the point in even playing? Even though logically, I totally get exactly what you're saying. It really was one or two contracts that were fulfilled that made all the difference. Because those contracts, like if I had put my station right in a certain spot, like it would have scored me an extra 600 points from doing just that because of the contracts I held in my hand.
Where you scored 200 the whole game.
Right. And I was like, oh, well, because I was too dumb to be able to put it there.
You can also sell your game to the investors early on to get extra spending money, but then you take a hit in points at the end of the game based on how much of your stock. Do you say
sell your game? I think if I own this, I'd sell my game.
Yeah, you're misguided on that. I think a game this heavy and crunchy.
Agreed.
The first play, there is always the potential to just kind of be disillusioned with how the play went, just because it's a learning play, no
Agreed.
matter what.
Sure, you can't really judge a game after the first play. I've thought about this. I'm like, I wish this game was on BGA.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So like you could really spend the time to think about your turns and process everything, and then play multiple games in a situation that doesn't have, it's not a big impact, So it's not like you're playing this game it's not the feature game you're playing for a game night. And BGA, you could just casually play and then take as long as you want in your turns. Yeah. I would love that.
I wish this was on Board Game Arena. It would be awesome to explore this game.
I will play this again with you. I'm not going to be the one who initiates that process, but I will play this again with you.
And the other thing I loved about it, there were multiple times in this game where I was on the edge of my seat, about to expand to a new location, and then Ben expanded and took the benefits and blocked me basically multiple times. Right before the turn I was going to do it, he did it. And I was like, there is no way I can recover from this. And I ended up winning, and it just felt, I don't know. I love the decisions in this game. And even if I wouldn't have won, even if Ben would have won, I had a blast playing it. I think the turns themselves are very simple. There are crunchy decisions, but there's a number of different actions that you can do. And I think there's multiple paths to victory. Again, we've only played once, so maybe if we played it a couple more times, we would realize that's not true. But after one play, this game blew me away, and I love it, and I can't wait to play it again. So that's my number 19, Imperial Steam.
So my number 18 is a game designed by Inca and Marcus Brand and published by Hutch. And that is Rajas of the Ganges. So this is a worker placement game where you are using dice. There's a river in the middle of the board. You have your own personal player board that you're going to be building things on. So the way it works is you have 2 workers to start the game, with the ability to get more workers as the game goes on. And there are sections of the board that you can place these workers. So one of the sections, I referenced the river. One of the sections you go on, you can move along the river. You move this boat up the river. And you get certain benefits for landing on certain spots. You can get additional dice that you can roll. You can get, I forget what they're called, where you can manipulate your dice and flip them over to the other side, influence or something. So I'm getting that wrong, but you can get that. You can get a number of other things that will be a benefit to you. You can use your dice to, like I said, go to a spot where you build a tile that you put on your board. And as you build that network out of your player board, you connect to spots at the side of the board that will give you additional benefits, or at the bottom of the board that will give you additional benefits. You can just go to spots that will get you a certain colored dice by exchanging one color for 2 other dice. You can go to a spot where you can just re-roll your dice if you don't like what you rolled when you put them on your board. And the most interesting thing of the game is how it scores. So there are 2 tracks in the game. There's a fame track, and then there is a money track. So the money track goes one way. The fame track goes the other way. There is recently a game that has come out that has done a similar mechanic, and I think it's currently ranked
Overrated.
It's currently ranked number 4, I believe, on the BGG Top Games of All Time. But this is the game, as far as I know, that did it first, right? So you get these tracks as soon as your markers intersect, the game end is triggered, and whoever does that first will trigger the end of the game and potentially win. Once the round is finished, if multiple people have done that, whoever has gone the furthest will end up winning the game. When I first saw this mechanic, it just kind of blew my mind. It was just the coolest thing ever. It's harder to go along the money track, and you go quicker along the fame track, but it's easier to get money and harder to get fame. So that decision of what am I going to focus on? Am I going to focus on money? Am I going to focus on fame? Am I going to do a little bit of both? That's just a super interesting decision to make.
Well, and it's a fine balance too, right? Because you can focus on both, and it can be effective. But if you're not focusing on one enough at certain times in the game, it becomes like a downfall to you. Like I've focused a number of times in games on both and ended up just getting completely blown away because I was at that time, it wasn't like moving along as well as everybody else who was going around with one of those types of things, fame or money. And it's interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah.
There were a couple games that when I saw your guys' top 30 list, there were a couple games where I was like, oh, how is that not on my list? And Rajas of the Ganges is one of them. It's an amazing game. Every time I play it, whether it's on the table or we're playing on Yukata right now, it's just so fun and so simple, but just rewarding. I love the tile. So you're building tiles and adding them to your mangrove or your homestead or something. I don't know what they call it, but so there's a tile laying aspect that you're building these tiles and then collecting rewards from them later on in the game. And I don't know. It's such a great game. It's really a simple and beautiful design.
Yeah, I love how the decisions in the game, it's like good, better, or best type of thing, right? It's like everywhere you go is a good place to go. There may be better places than others, but like you go somewhere and you're like, okay, that's cool. I did something cool. It's just like no decision in the game is like, oh, I'm getting penalized for doing this. It's like everywhere I go is a good thing, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. However, if you are ever out of dice, find yourself out of dice and you have to take the action to draw a single die, you're playing the game wrong.
Yeah, right.
And you realize that immediately when you do that. You're like, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Why did I do that?
Yeah, that is true. You don't want to get in that spot. But
in fact, I just pulled up our current game. There's a yellow worker in one of those spots.
That's probably me.
It is.
Yeah, that wasn't a great move for me. But I have a plan. I have a plan. I have some terrible rolls going in this game. I'm thinking about re-rolling 3 dice, but we'll see how that plan
in our
out.
current game. I have no idea what my current strategy is. Yeah, I'm lost in this one.
I have a plan, but I don't think it's going to be successful.
Yeah. Well, at least we're all on the same page there. The first time I played this game was at our Cabin Con. Okay. It was the last game of
Was it the morning when we left?
The morning we were leaving Cabin Con, Tyler taught this game to me. And one of the things contextually about that was that the night before, it was a late night, I was grumpy and I snapped at Tyler specifically, I think. And part of me wanted to jump in on this game of Rajas because I was like, all right, I need to break bread. I need to make sure that like no hard feelings. That like it was just me being tired and grumpy and whatever. And so I jumped in for that reason. And you taught the game and like I got it. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And it ended that experience, which if I hadn't played this game, I could have had a a bad taste in my mouth at the end of Cabin Con because of my attitude, but because I played this, it made it feel even better. And like the experience, and just from then, I've always enjoyed my plays of this game, and it was easy and simple to understand and get into. And the length of play of this game is really good on the table. Like it's just, it's not too long, it's not too short. It's a great length. It's your Goldilocks kind of game.
Yeah, it was great. That was a fun play. We got up early and Ben played with us, and it was good to play. And then, the three of us drove home together, and we had some good talks and just capped off the trip in an awesome way. So that was an awesome experience. Yeah, this is such a good game.
Yeah, that's
should be on my list.
That's why
somewhere.
it's number 18 for me. That's Rajas of the Ganges.
Well, my number 18 game on my list is a game that is near and dear to my heart for multiple reasons. It's a game that I actually ran the Kickstarter for, and so it has special significance there, but it's also a game that I've played a lot of as a result of that and come to love. That is Pingyao First Chinese Banks. This is a game that was originally published in China by Jing Studio. Its designer is Wu Shuang. And he's got a series of these games that are the Ancient Chinese Cities series. So all of his games essentially take place in a ancient Chinese series or cities that has a cultural or significant historical impact. So you've got Dunhuang, Pearl on the Silk Road, and you've got Pingyao First Chinese Bank. Essentially, in Pingyao First Chinese Banks, you are a Chinese banker, one of the first bankers in the world as banking came into play, and you are trying to create remittances, and you're trying to send and make and take loans so that you can make money, and you're trying to make your bank branches go throughout all of China and amass wealth and make sure that people have a safe, secure way to store money. The game has these silver ingot pieces, Scythe, that are like beautiful and metal pieces that are really nice and tactile.
Got some girth to them.
They do. And I really like the heft. I like I like playing with the components of this game a lot because there's a lot of different, like, really tactile vibe to it. But it's a dice as worker placement game, and I really like dice as worker placement games. That's what Bitoku is, which was in my number 19. I love that mechanic, and I think it works really well in this game. Essentially, the dice that you place on a worker spot have the value take up a spot. So you can't put an equal value die on a spot necessarily. And in this game, because it's banking, if you go to a spot that already has a die there, you're going to either earn money or pay money equal to the difference of the value of dice. So it makes these interesting decisions about where am I going to place my dice, because if I put it here, it's going to earn me money, and if I can use that money, I can then, or if I can earn that money, I can then use it immediately on that turn to go and do something with it. And there's a whole lot of like economic vibe going on here, both thematically and mechanically. And so you have to make these exchanges and spend money to make money in this game. And that's really exciting to me. I was surprised when I first took on this project at how integrated the mechanics and the theme were, and how actually thematic this game ends up being and feels like you're actually doing banking. So it's a game, again, that's near and dear to my heart. I want to be able to play the expansion, the Golden Pawner, more, but I haven't played that very much. And so I want to play this game more. I've played it like 13 times already, but I want more of this game in my life.
It's pretty. I'm looking at pictures of it now. It looks really nice.
Yeah, the one major complaint that I've heard about it is that the dice are like a very vibrant color that kind of doesn't go with the theme.
I like them. I think they look good.
But I think they do a good job at popping out so that you know what's going on and where you're going. It helps orient players for the game's sake purpose. But yeah, if you look at that board and zoom in on it, like there is some really beautiful art going on there. But yeah, that's Pingyao First Chinese Banks.
So my number 18 is a game that we've already talked about. It was Tyson's number 25. It is Carnegie, designed by Xavier Georges, and the artist is Ian O'Toole, publishers Quind Games. I mean, we did a whole feature review on this back in episode 13. I love this game. I'm still constantly playing games with random people on BGA. It's one of my new favorite games. I'll put it that way. It is beautiful. I love the Ian O'Toole art. Love all the decisions. I think there are tons of different paths to victory or combinations of different things that you do to win this game. Just when I thought I figured out, I'll play someone and get blown away and they'll score over 200 points. And it's like, holy cow, how did you do that? Like, that was insane. But so this is my number 18, Carnegie. One thing I'll say, go listen to our episode 13. Mark was on that episode with us. He pulled a little more theme out and shared that with us and his thoughts on the theme when we were kind of naysaying the theme a little bit, like, it doesn't really come through in the game. And then he pointed out a few specific things that were like, oh yeah, totally. And I've heard other content creators talk about this game and say, oh yeah, the theme's kind of but
if you look for it, it's there.
It's there.
And it's integrated. Like when Mark points it out like that, you're like, yeah, that makes sense why that's there.
Yeah. So that's my number 18, Carnegie. It was number 25 on Tyson's list.
Okay, so my number 17 is a game that's been referenced. At least the game system has been referenced. And this is Pandemic, designed by Matt Leacock. And
Tell me more about this exciting game.
Published by Z-Man Games. Have you guys heard of this one?
Never.
Yeah. So I'm cheating a little bit. I'm putting this as the Pandemic system, right? If I'm going to say that what my favorite is, it's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. That could be my favorite gaming experience of all time. It was the first time I'd played a Legacy game. The fact that I was ripping up cards hurt my soul, but
how did you get over that?
I don't know. But at the same time,
still hasn't, clearly.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was like, holy cow, this is amazing. There are boxes that I get to open that have like goodies. This is crazy. And I don't know what they're going to be. And the way the story unfolded was incredible. We played it with our neighbors, and some of the experiences we had playing through that game, I'll remember forever. Like it was, and we go back and we talk about, those experiences every once in a while. It was just cool. I couldn't leave it off my list. So really it's the whole system, but it's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. And I know I can't go back and play it again. It's an unplayable game, but I just can't ignore the experience that it gave me.
But you're lumping in the whole system.
But I'm lumping in the whole system, with my favorite being Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
I know that Pandemic Legacy was not the first Legacy game, but it's really, in my opinion, like the first Legacy game that put Legacy games on the map. And I think it did a fantastic job at that. And I really enjoyed my experience of that, even though I don't necessarily love Pandemic itself. I love Pandemic Legacy. I think it was genius from like marketing perspective and a game experience perspective. What they did with it is like there's marketing research out there about what are the most euphoric times of playing board games. And one of the highest rated times is when you first open a box and you first get your game, unwrap it, go through the contents. That's one of the times that board game players actually are the most excited about it. Yeah, exactly. But to take that element and then put it into gameplay means that you can relive that experience with the same game over and over again. And that was genius.
That's amazing. And just the anticipation, Oh, and then I'm putting new stickers in my book. Well, that was kind of weird too. It's like, I got to put this perfectly in this book.
Adding a new rule to the book?
Yeah. All of a sudden there's a new rule book. Yeah, there's a new rule. This is crazy. Yeah. That experience was awesome. And really, vanilla Pandemic at this point is just is a little boring, right? But that whole system that was created,
really boring.
Yeah, that was created. It was just genius that Matt Leacock came up with that, and the places that it's gone has been pretty incredible, I think. So that's my number 17, Pandemic. The Pandemic system with my favorite being Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
So I'm not going to cheat on mine. I'm going to just give one straight game.
Hey, it's our podcast. We can do what we want,
yeah,
okay?
that's right.
I don't know that was cheating.
I don't either. I think that it's a worthy game to have on your list. Another game that I think is worthy to have on your top 30 list that I'm so sad that you two have not had the experience of playing yet or have the option to even put it on your list is A Feast for Odin, designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Feuerlandspiel. It is a game in which you are basically Vikings living the Viking life. You can do almost anything that you think a Viking ever did in this game.
There's like 800 worker placement spaces, right?
There are like over 60, I think.
Different resources that you can get and weapons.
61.
There's a lot of bits to this game.
There are 61 different options to choose from.
That's cool.
Oh my gosh.
That's cool.
This is a worker placement game in which there are 61 worker placement spots on the board, which seems overwhelming. It helps because not all of those options are viable unless you have specific resources or things like that. And so it does a pretty good job of showing you how to play and what to play and where to do it. But this is a worker placement game that is true Uwe Rosenberg fashion. It takes a lot of his other game mechanics, combines them into this, and then kind of lets you have free reign to it. It's not really the most thematic game out there. You're not playing it because you feel like a Viking, even though everything that a Viking does can be done in this game. That doesn't feel like what you're doing, but it is this puzzle. You have polyomino type of Tetris fitting shape pieces to figure out. You can go and gather resources and do resource management. You can do push your luck type of experience with going raiding or pillaging or going whaling, and there's a lot of different things in this game that you can do. What I've come to really appreciate about this game is that it is on BGA, where I only got to play it on the table one time and really wanted to play again. It's a hard game to get to the table because of the size, the setup, the play time, but being able to play it on BGA means that I can play over and over and over again, and I have been able to do that. It has a great tutorial for solo play on BGA that helps you learn the game. So if you want to learn how to play this game and then play it on the table, BGA is a good outlet for that as well. But I like this game a lot, and I've been playing a lot of it with one of our listeners, Harame and Pipes Galore on BGA, and they've been beating me up lately in our most recent game. So I'm excited for when you guys finally decide to join the fray and figure out how to play A Feast for Odin.
I started a single player game to learn it like a week ago, and I haven't taken a turn yet.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. You haven't taken a turn in War Chest either in 3 weeks. So.
Hey, but I gave you access to the game by
true.
starting a game with you.
But I can only play with you.
Yeah. No.
Or anybody else who has access to it.
No, I think you have access to create a game now, don't you?
I can, but only with people who have access to it.
Oh. Well, I think
Where's my invite?
John has access.
Oh, okay. I'll have to play with him.
I have like 10 more games before I can get access to Alpha.
To Alpha. Nice.
Yeah.
So Feast for Odin, though, going back to that was on my shelf of shame. It still is, but that it was on our top
List,
5 games on our shelf of shame list. That one is still unplayed for me. I need to get it played.
Yeah, I've offered you experiences too to pull that off your shelf.
I can't find my rule book. I think it's in my bedroom
Wait a
somewhere.
minute, that's the one you lost the rule book?
You don't
Oh my
need
gosh.
the rule book. I'll teach you the game.
Yeah, I mean, I know the rules are available online and I can learn it on BGA, but yeah, I just haven't done it yet. It's still a little bit of a beast.
It is. It is a daunting game to try and get figured out. But it's a good one, and it's one that I eagerly play whenever I get the opportunity. And that's my number 17, A Feast for Odin.
All right, so my number 17 is a game that we've talked about before, Dwellings of Eldervale. It came out in 2020, published by Breaking Games. It's designed by Luke Laurie. There are a number of different artists credited. We most recently talked about this in our top 5 games that should be a movie episode. And I had a rather dark and different take on how I would explore this game as a movie.
Has that been picked up by any?
I haven't heard anything.
You haven't heard anything?
No.
Because, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
I mean, it's kind of a slow season right now for film studios. But this is a worker placement game where you kind of build out the map with hex tiles. Each hex tile represents an element or a realm of power. And all the realms of power start out on the built as the initial board with some element tiles. Each realm of power that you go to does a different action or gives you a different reward. But basically, you're putting out workers, and that might be just basic workers, or it might be your wizard or your dragon or your warrior. They're different types, and they have different abilities. And each faction or species that you play with has asymmetric abilities. But when you put them out on the board, you're collecting stuff and getting rewards from the tile that you place them on. But you also have the potential to turn your workers into dwellings, which Mark loves this. Not really. But
you should put a hat on them.
You put a hat on the meeple, which I love. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
You score a lot of points by eventually turning your workers into dwellings by putting these hats on them. And you collect more points by strategically placing them on hexes on the board that will give you additional points based on what's surrounding them. However, each time you put a worker out or a warrior or whatever, you're putting them in danger because other players can initiate a battle. Any adjacent workers or anybody that places somebody on the same tile, it will initiate a battle, and any surrounding workers or other meeples can be involved in this battle, right? Which you'll then roll dice. You get more dice for certain characters and have a higher probability of winning, but that's not always the case. However, when your guys die, they go to the underworld, and then they are resurrected or they come back to your board eventually at the end of the round. You also are potentially putting your workers out on the map, and monsters are roaming the map and could also be involved in these battles. There is still a lot to explore in this game for us. We've played it a few times. I don't feel like I've seen all the cards. There's spell cards that you can buy, and basically you can accumulate these cards and kind of add them to a tableau in front of you. And one thing that I love about this game is when you take like kind of the rest action on your turn, instead of placing a guy, you're taking all your guys back from the board. And when you bring them back, you can place them on the cards that you've purchased or the ones that you started out with, and do an action with each one that you pull back. And I love that part of the game. Just trying to build up your tableau with different abilities and actions that are available to you. You know, you send your guys out, do things on the map, and then you rest and bring them back, and then you get to do more stuff with them. And that's really cool. Just really fun and completely different game from most of the games that I've played or that we play week to week. I just got the legendary upgrade, so I got a whole new set of monsters. I got the sound bases that each one makes this basically the same sound almost. I mean, they're slightly different.
Kind of sounds like a toilet flushing.
Different
tones of a toilet flushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't pick up the toilet flushing, but maybe I need to go listen to them again. But
they're cool.
The thing that I was
like
excited about more than anything was just getting a whole new set of monsters that have different abilities and do different things. And, you know, this game is big on elements. I think there's 6 different elements that's tied through the whole game. And there's a scoring track that you try and score a ton of points. That you buy elemental cards from a certain element or spell cards from a certain element. You go up on that track, and there are other ways to advance on that track. But, yeah, I just really love this game.
This game, while it did not make my top 30 list, a top 30 list that it would make of mine would be games with the most superfluous components yet still entertaining. Between the dwelling hats and the toilet flushing stands, this game has a lot.
The monsters, they're pretty dang cool,
exactly.
right?
They're
but
all cool.
It's over the top.
And there's even a way to control any of the monsters that are on the map at any given time. You can gain control of them and use them as if they are one of your people.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So there's a few things about this game. The first time I played it, I had terrible dice rolls, right? And I was just losing every battle. And you play a game for the first time, you don't know how important certain things are in the game. It turns out battling isn't necessarily that important, right? So you can have terrible rolls, lose a lot of battles, and still be competitive in the game.
And you get rewarded when you lose battles. You get some rewards. So.
Yeah. So it's not that punishing. You get rewards if you win battles. So it's better to win. Yeah. But if you lose, then it's not like game breaking for you, which I think that's pretty cool about the game.
But the advice you gave after that experience, because I hadn't played that first game with you, and then the second game that you played of it, I played that next game with you. And the advice that I remember coming from that experience that you said is you don't need to going for battles is not necessarily the way that you're going to win this game. And so I made an attempt to not go for battles. And yet I was involved in almost every single battle of that game, not by my own choice. And I was like,
going to all the hot places.
Yeah. And I ended up being destroyed in that game. It's a game I definitely would like to play again.
Yeah, it is a fun one. You mentioned resting. So that is a cool part of the game. A lot of times in games when you rest, you take all the cards back in your hand, or you're not doing anything with that action. But this one, it's a little bit different. We're actually doing things with those workers that come back, which I don't remember all the specifics of that because it's been a long time since we played. Yeah. But I remember that was being a pretty cool part of the game and a cool design decision, I thought. So it's a fun one. I'd like to get that one out again.
Yeah, I think the last time we played was at Cabin Con. So what was that, January?
Yeah.
It's been a while, so... that is my number 17, Dwellings of Eldervale.
So my number 16 is a game designed by Mike Elliott and Eric Lang. You guys heard of Eric Lang?
Once upon a time.
Yeah, he's made a few games. And this is published by WizKids. So this is Dice Masters. So there's a bunch of different versions of Dice Masters. The first one I got into was the Marvel Dice Masters, but there's DC, there's Dungeons and Dragons, there's just a bunch of different ones that are slipping my mind at the moment. But I mean, you can get as deep as you want in Dice Masters. It's been out for a while now, and there's just a ton of different sets. So originally, it was kind of a collectible dice game, right? Where you would buy blind boosters, open up those boosters, and just kind of collect. So I would get these gravity feeds that had like 90 packs in them, and we would put them on the table. I'd get my kids and we would open up all these packs and start sorting the cards. And there's different rarities, just like any collectible game. There's the common, uncommon, and there's these super rare and super rare. The super rare had a red bar on them. And we would do the super rare dance if we ever opened up one of those. It was just it was like almost the best part of the game was opening up these packs. It was really fun. But the way this game works is you have a certain number of heroes. If you're playing Marvel or DC, or you're just recruiting some people for your team. So you get 8 cards and you put them in front of you. Now those cards will have a certain number of dice that you can put on the cards. So you have a pool of 20 dice that you can allocate to your 8 cards. And there's dice limits for each card. So you build your team and then you put dice on your team. And your opponent's going to do the same thing. Then you start the game. So you have 8 sidekick dice to start the game. And the sidekick dice are just really weak dice, but that's what you get to start. You take 4 of those from the bag and you roll them. The dice will have either a sidekick character or they'll have an energy side on them. The energy is what you're going to use to recruit new dice and also to field the dice that you roll. So, each character die, if you roll the character side, will have a recruitment cost, a fielding cost, which is what you're going to use to get your die out. It's going to have an attack value and then a defense value. So if I roll, I get a character side. Any energy that I have, I can use to recruit that character and field them, or I can use that energy to buy new characters. So if I field a character, then I have the choice to attack with that character. My opponent, if they've fielded dice in a prior turn, they can then block with that character or not block if they don't have anybody. And that attack will go through to my opponent. The whole goal is you're trying to get your opponent's life from 20 to 0. If you can do that the quickest, then you win the game. I guess if you do it first, you win the game because you're playing with 2 players. And then, the game's over and you play again. I just love this game. I love the process of building your deck. There's so many synergies that you have between your characters. Usually I start with a card that's a really cool card, and then I build my team around that card. And then you go and play and you see if it works. And that whole process is just super fun. I played this game, over 100 times. It's been a while since I got it out, but it's just one that I really enjoy.
So I bought a D&D gravity feed. Is that what they're called?
Yep.
And I had a blast opening it, and I haven't never played it.
You've never played it?
No, I've never played it, but I had a blast opening it. I think I got a super rare red dragon in that.
Yeah.
That was cool. My son's got some of the Marvel versions of it, but I think he played with my wife a couple times, but I've never really sat down and played it.
Never really gotten
Your
into
experience, Tyler, is similar to my experience with the game in that I have a Marvel Ultron pack of stuff. I've only ever opened it and looked at it, and I even printed off like a player board. They don't come with the player mats, and I made one of those and played it, but I've never played with it. And the only reason I bought it was because it was early on in the start of my board game collecting experience, and I had joined recently a Facebook group of board gamers, and it was one of the first board game groups that I ever joined on social media. And somebody goes, "Oh, if you go to Walgreens, you can get this for $5. It's a steal. It's totally worth it." And so I was like, "Well, I have to do that." And I immediately
$5 game.
I've
gone through stretches like that.
Yeah, and I bought it, but I've never played it. So
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I play with my daughter. I played with my daughter, and it was just fun memories building teams and playing with her. So it's one I'll go back to. So that is my number 16, Dice Masters.
My number 16 is a game that I've talked a lot about in previous episodes. Most recently, I talked about it in episode 25, our top 5 games to play on Halloween. It was my number 1 on that list. It's Final Girl. Now, if you are paying attention closely to these lists, which I highly doubt anybody is paying attention with this much granularity, you'll notice that Final Girl was my number 1 on that list. Cthulhu Death May Die was my number 2 on that list. I haven't mentioned Cthulhu Death May Die yet, and Final Girl is my number 16. So spoiler alert, Cthulhu Death May Die may appear later on in this list.
A little flippity flop going on.
You may ask why Final Girl is 16 then.
Throwing continuity out the window.
I know. The integrity of this podcast is gone.
I haven't revealed anything. I said maybe. I didn't say anything definitive. Yeah. But the reason why Final Girl is number 16 on this list and still the number 1 on my Halloween list is because I think as a Halloween game, Final Girl is quintessential. The experience it brings from that evocative experience of Halloween is there at the top, but it is not necessarily from a mechanics game the experience that I want to play every single time. It's a solo game only, and I prefer playing with people most of the time, but I do love a good solo game, and this is a fantastic game. It's the only solo game, I believe, that has made my top 30 list, or the only can be played at solo game that is on this list for me, but it is worthy of its place at number 16. I think it is one of the most exciting game experiences I've had in a lot of different ways, at least consistently. It creates moments. We've talked about that already in this podcast, this episode. We've talked about the moments that games can bring, and this brings moments. So that's why Final Girl is my number 16.
All right. Integrity is back.
It was never gone.
Okay, you're right.
All right. So my number 16 is a game that was on Tyson's list at number 30, Pulsar 2849. This was designed by Vladimir Suchy. The artist is Soren Medding, and it was published by Czech Games Edition. I'll just mention a couple things. We've talked about this game before. This is my favorite Vladimir game. But you can go back to the last episode or previous episodes where we've talked about it. The two things that stand out to me the most in this game and that I love about it and why it is so high on my list is, number one, the dice drafting mechanic. You roll a bunch of dice, you figure out what the median is of those dice, and then if you pick a dice when you're drafting higher than that median value, you go down on, what are the two tracks?
I think it's engineering track and turn order track or something like
engineering and turn order, or initiative or something like that, right? Yeah. And then but you can do more with a higher valued die on your turn, which you'll then use to place and take an action somewhere. But if you take lower dice, then you go up on those tracks, or you can choose which track you go up or down on, depending on which dice you take. That mechanic is just awesome. Yeah. I love that. I would love to see different versions of that. I would love to see other games take a hint from that dice drafting. Maybe it exists somewhere else, but playing that in this game, Pulsar 2849, that was incredible.
It makes for some super interesting decisions.
Yeah, and everybody, you re-roll the dice at the start of every round, and everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting to see what the dice results are. And sometimes they're all 5s and 6s, and you can take higher value dice.
Other times they're all 1s and 2s.
Yeah, and it changes what you might do during that round depending on what dice come out, and it's just awesome. So I love that. The second thing I love, this game's played over 8 rounds, and each round a new row of technologies become available, and especially the ones at the end. And they're limited spots. So if one person or 2 people go there, then they're locked out from other people. And the ones near the tail end, I think might be rounds 6, 7, and 8, are all end game scoring. And just the suspense and the anticipation of, am I going to get the spot that I need, right? Based on turn order, which again, the initiative track comes into play. Am I going to get the spots that I need to score the most points that I possibly can based on the end game scoring? Aside from that, there's also suspense of like, is that transmitter going to come or still be available when it's my turn again to buy, or is Kevin going to buy it, or is Tyson going to buy it? I feel like the board is pretty wide open, and there's a few times where people cross paths and somebody kind of discovers a planet before you do, and puts control and gets the reward from it. But I don't think that comes into play as much as just the suspense of, if somebody takes that spot on the technology row that would have given me 24 points at the end of the game. There is just tons of suspense at the end of the game and in the latter rounds of this game.
Well, and it makes it so important, that draft. It makes more decisions on the drafting, because especially on that turn order track, right?
Yeah.
Because if you want to be first in turn order in those later rounds, because you want those end game scoring positions. So that makes it even harder to select those dice, because you want the higher dice to do cooler things, but then you also want turn order to be able to select the area you want on that technology track. Yeah. It's just a lot of different decisions to make.
There's a lot going on. Really, it's once you've played it once, it's a fairly simple game to play, but just the decisions and the suspense, it's so exciting. It's such a great game. That's my favorite Vladimir Suchy game, number 16, Pulsar 2849.
So my number 15 is my highest rated game in the Race for the Galaxy series, and that is Roll for the Galaxy. This is designed by Wei Hua Wang and Tom Lehman.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought it was
Tom Lehman.
It's a Tom Lehman game. Yeah. And it's published by Rio Grande Games. So Roll for the Galaxy is like all games in the Race for the Galaxy series. It's a race to see who can get 12 tiles out first, or you deplete the victory point token pool for the game. That's how the game ends. The way you get there is you have a certain number of dice that you're going to roll each round. And you roll these dice behind a screen. And everybody has a little piece of cardboard that corresponds to all the different actions that can be taken in that round. So there's exploring, where you get more tiles. There's settling planets. There's developments that you can develop. There's you can produce, and then you can consume. So you roll behind this screen, and then you assign dice based on what you roll. So if you roll a settle side of a die, for example, you're going to put it in the settle column. Everybody can then choose one action that they want to take. So if I choose explore, I can take any of the dice that I roll and put it on explore, and then you have all the other dice that are lined up. Now, there's ways to move around the dice based on what other tiles you have in front of you in your tableau, or you can what's called dictate, which means you put a dice to the side and then you can put another die wherever you want. So there's ways to mitigate that, but for the most part, you're kind of stuck with what you roll. Everybody else is doing the same thing. So they're selecting an action, not knowing what everybody else is selecting. And then when everybody's done, you reveal, and then you only do those actions that have been selected. So if explore and develop were the only ones that were selected around the table, you don't do settle, you don't do produce, you don't do consume. All those dice go back into your cup, and you're going to roll those the next round. You play this until, like I said, somebody builds 12 tiles in front of them, or the victory point pool is done, and whoever has the most points wins. The coolest thing about this game is trying to leech off of everybody else's actions. Yep. So you can maybe see that somebody is trying to settle one of their worlds, and think in your head that, okay, they're going to choose settle. I'm going to load up some dice on settle, but choose another action. And I get to do my action, and I also get to do the action that they select. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't, but trying to get in other people's heads and figure out that what they're doing is, I think, what really makes this game shine. And it's one of the reasons why it's, my top rated in the race series. I love that aspect of it.
It feels so good when you guess correctly.
It's a double snap moment for me every time. That's one of those where I'll just jump up and I'll get super excited.
I knew it.
It worked out.
Yes. I knew it. Yeah. So it's really cool. It's a great feeling when it works out. So that is one of the main reasons why it's on my list, and as high as it is at number 15, that is Roll for the Galaxy.
So my number 15 game is a game that we've only played a handful of times, but one that has stuck with me since we've played it, and I haven't played it. I don't think we've played it this year. I don't think I've played it this year, but it's one that I continually think about even after not having played it for a year. It's Coloma. Coloma is published by Final Frontier Games, and it's designed by Johnny Peck. And it's so essentially what Coloma is you're in the Old West, and it's a frontier town, and you're trying to establish your own way of life. You could be a prospector, you could be a cowboy, etc., and you're given these different roles. But it is an action selection game that occurs simultaneously. So everybody is choosing their actions at the start of a round, and then you're secretly selecting those actions, and then everybody reveals simultaneously what they've selected. Now, the cool thing about this that I really like is that if you select an action that no other player selects, you get what's called a boom bonus. And the boom bonus makes it so that you're getting to do a little bit extra, and you can actually plan on some of those. So similar to what Kevin was just talking about in Roll for the Galaxy, where if you can anticipate what your opponents are going to do, you can get bonus stuff out of it, which is something that I really like. That's why I really like Roll for the Galaxy, because it creates that moment. That's why I really like Coloma, because it does the same thing. Now, the problem is if you select the same action as another player, you bust. It disables that boom bonus. And it's really fun because there are times where you're like, I don't think anybody's going to select this action because it's not that worthwhile to either me or them. But by me selecting it allows me to do a little bit more than I would otherwise. And there are moments at which somebody thinks that exact same type of thought and they select the same thing as you, and you both bust and you don't get to do as much. And the action that you really wanted to do doesn't get selected. And you're like, if I had actually chose that one, it would be a lot more exciting.
So everybody's second guessing themselves, basically.
Exactly. And it creates really tense, exciting moments that I really enjoy. So everybody does these actions. They go around and do different things to build up your kind of frontier and create engines. You build bridges, you create businesses, you place camps and gunmen, etc. At the end of every round, there is a shootout that is going to occur. And the other thing that I really like about this game is this shootout has this area control majority thing where there are a certain number of spaces available. You have a certain number of gunmen that are available to you, and you can get more as the game progresses, but you're going to be placing these out, and there are certain spots available and encampments essentially of gunmen, and you have to have the exact number to go into that place. And it also determines turn order. So if you have a majority control over the amount of gunmen sent to this potential shootout at the end, it allows you to have priority in turn order in the next turn, which can be a big deal in certain ways. But what's I really like is that it is also kind of a semi-co-op feature because you need to have enough gunmen in there to outnumber the gunmen that are going to come out and shoot out with your gunmen. And everybody playing is putting gunmen in encampments to raid. I guess they're like bandits or something, kind of coming to raid the town. So you're defending it. So everybody is semi-cooperatively putting things out there. If not enough people put a gunman out, then what ends up happening is you lose the shootout and everybody loses something and loses a fair amount of different things throughout the game. And so you're making this balance of, do I gain area control and just put a bunch of gunmen there and then risk somebody being like, well, I'm not supporting because you have all the gunmen and you're going to end up losing stuff and you're not going to get the bonuses you want? Or do I wait until somebody else starts putting gunmen out there so that I can make that choice? And it makes for some really interesting decisions in the game. I really like this game. It's one that, like I said, I've continually thought about this game since we've played it, but we haven't gotten it back to the table in a long time, and it's one that I would love to play again.
This is one of the games that was somehow not in my ranking list that I did. I think this would have ended up in my top 30. I've only played it a few times. Dan has it.
I think Ben has it as well.
But yeah, it's such a fun game. I think it might be my favorite Johnny Pack game. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find. I hope that they do another print run soon, and I would consider getting this. But
and that magnet's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
It's got the pieces that go together in the center of the board that rotate and make choices different. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, that's my number 15, Coloma.
My number 15 is a game that we've talked about quite a bit in the past. It is Nemesis, designed by Adam Klipinski and published by Awaken Realms. I think this is the highest Awaken Realms game on my list. I've played this 5 or 6 times. Not going to go too in depth into it. It's basically Aliens, the board game. And I just love the cinematic moments that it creates. It's semi-cooperative. It is fun when you play a game where everybody actually works and is incentivized to work together. But it's also fun to be betrayed and to wonder who's going to betray you or who's going to misdirect the ship to the wrong location, or who's going to sabotage the engines. Just a lot going on in this game. It's a little rules heavy. But when those aliens, intruders start showing up on the ship, it just creates some really cool moments. You're sneaking around, trying to be quiet, trying to explore, trying to get to where you need to.
There's tension.
You have a couple different objectives. At one point, you have to choose between the two, which it might be to kill Kevin or to survive and make it to Earth or whatever. I don't know. Such a good game. So much fun. I really like this one. And there's so much content that I backed the Nemesis Lockdown Kickstarter and did it in 2 separate waves. So I got all the Nemesis content, all Nemesis Lockdown. There's a ton of stuff here, and I don't feel like I've even
scratched the surface.
Yeah, I haven't even scratched the surface. So I'm excited to play this more. We need to get this back to the table because it's fun every time that we've played it.
One of the things I really like about this is that it makes you suspicious of everybody. There could be nobody who has like a bad goal or trying to mess with you or ruin your game or anything like that. But the potential is there. So you're suspicious of everybody doing anything. When we played with Logan, your son, Tyler, he started walking towards me in funny ways like throughout the game. And I was
He's just trying to help you take out some aliens.
Yeah, that's what he kept saying too. And I was like, no chance. So I would like close every door behind me and make sure that he couldn't like easily come follow me. And at the end of the game, he revealed that his objective was to try and murder me. And he was unsuccessful because I was suspicious the whole time of him. But it creates interesting, fun moments like that.
Well, and there's cool thing, like there's a variant where the first person or the first player that gets eliminated from the game, they then start controlling the intruders, which is cool. Yeah. I don't know if everybody's going to walk away from the table happy, but I could see how playing that way could be a lot of fun because sometimes a player gets eliminated early and then they're just kind of stuck watching. But if you're the first player that gets eliminated and then you can now control the intruders, that's kind of awesome. Cool asymmetric player powers, lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, we've talked about it. It creates experiences. So we've talked about it before, but at one time I killed Tyler with the Molotov cocktail.
That was so awesome.
I'm like, he's like, what? I still remember the look on your face when I did that.
Yeah.
And I remember where I was sitting. I remember exactly on the board. And any game that can do that, where you just have experiences that you remember forever, is a good game. I don't know if it's the type of game you can't take too seriously. Right. You're just playing it to have a good time and to have those moments. And it's a lot of fun. It's a good one.
That's awesome. I'll never forget the Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
That's my number 15, Nemesis.
So my number 14 is a game designed by Alan Moon and published by Days of Wonder. And this is Ticket to Ride. So specifically, Ticket to Ride Nordic countries. Now, there's a few reasons why this made the list. I think most Ticket to Ride games that I played, I love. But as I've explained before, and if you've listened to this podcast, anything Nordic countries, specifically Sweden, or Swedish related, I gravitate towards. I spent a few years there. So I wanted, as soon as I saw this game was available, I tracked it down and I got a copy of it. And I think as far as I know, it's still in print. The reason why I like Nordic countries is it is specifically a 3-player map. So it's a little bit tighter, it's a little bit more cutthroat, and it creates tension more than any other Ticket to Ride map that I've played. So the way that this game plays, if you haven't played it, if you're listening to this podcast, good chance you played Ticket to Ride. It's been out for a while. But this is it's a set collection game where you're trying to claim routes between cities that match ticket cards that you have. So you could have a route from I forget the cities in there, from Stockholm to Göteborg, for example. And you need to complete routes that connect to those two cities. However you want to connect them, it just needs to be a continuous route. And at the end of the game, you get points for that route. Nobody else knows where you're going. It's hidden knowledge, your tickets, and based on how you do that is how you're going to score at the end of the game. You can take more train cards on your turn. You can take more tickets, or you can claim a route. It's as easy as that. Super simple game. At the end of the game ends when somebody gets down to a certain number of trains, and that's typically 2 trains, and then it signals the end of the game. Everybody takes one more turn, including the player that triggered the end of the game. And just that tension of you have a destination ticket, you need one card. You look at somebody else and you see that they're down to 4 trains. You don't know if they're going to end the game or if you're going to have one more turn or 2 more turns. That tension of, am I going to be able to complete these routes, is always fun, and it's always exciting. At least for me anyway. And that's what makes, I think, Ticket to Ride for me one of the better games.
We've been playing it quite a bit lately on Board Game Arena, and it's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. I had one game where I got completely blocked out of where I needed to go, and I think my score was like half of the winner. And then I had another game where at the end of the game, every turn I was just drawing new routes to see if I could just get more routes at it, and I was successful like 3 or 4 of the turns out of 4 or 5 where I got routes that I had actually already completed, which was awesome.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. I was looking at the number of those route cards you had in your hand, and at one point I think I saw you had 8, and I was like, well, there's no chance he's fulfilled all 8 of those.
I had them all but 1, I think, which
that's
was
pretty
awesome.
Good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
So it's a classic. It's such a great game to introduce new people to board games with too, because it's really pretty simple.
Yeah, it's really accessible. One of my favorite versions are the anniversary versions. So I have the original, the 10-year anniversary of the original, which really, it's a massive board. It upgrades the pieces. There's the train cars are all different, the different colors. They come in these cool tins. And then I've got the Europe, I think 15-year anniversary edition. That's similar. And those are always fun to play. There's a bunch of expansions. We have Alvin and Dexter. I don't know if you guys have played with that before, but they just create havoc on the board, which is really cool. I think that one's tough to track down now, but there's just a lot of different ones. And it's a game for me that creates moments as well. There's one time we were playing with Matt, my brother-in-law. I mentioned him before, but he scored like 20 points the whole game. and he was trying, and we always, it was one of those games where you write it in the box cover because it was just like hilarious. So we have it written in the box cover, his score, and we joke around about that all the time.
That's awesome.
We have a long history with Ticket to Ride, and I think it's well deserving of my number 14.
My number 14 is a game we've already discussed on this episode. Even it's Rajas of the Ganges. It's for all the reasons Kevin put it on his list at number 18. I think it's a fantastic game. I already mentioned the experience I had for the first time I played with it, which made it a memorable experience, and learning it and closing out Cabin Con with it. So I'm not going to go into it and talk anything more of it. But yeah, I love Rajas of the Ganges. That's my number 14.
My number 14, this game's come up pretty much anytime we've talked about Lost Ruins of Arnak. It is. So over probably 4 or 5 episodes that we've done in the past, we've gotten into discussion about this, whether it was the original time or when a new expansion came out for one or the other. It is Dune Imperium. It's designed by Paul Denon, and the artist is Clay Brooks and Raul Ramos and Nate Storm, and the publisher is Direwolf. This is an area-controlled deck builder. We talked about Eschaton earlier. Lost Ruins of Arnak, area-controlled deck builder. They constantly get compared because they came out about the same time. Lost Ruins and Dune Imperium. I love this game. This is my pick out of those two. I love the Dune IP though, so it's easy for me to like this one. I think it does some different things than Lost Ruins does, and Lost Ruins does some different things than Dune Imperium does. We've talked at length in the past. I am terrible at this game. Logan destroys me every time we play this. I'm excited for the new expansion that's coming out. The first expansion was amazing and incredible. I just have fun playing this. I don't need to talk in detail about the gameplay because we've talked about it so many times before. It's not on Kevin or Tyson's list. Spoiler alert.
I'll tell you why it's not on my list. Because you've yet to play it with me a second time.
Let's play it right now.
Okay, closing out the podcast.
Kevin's leaving.
Well, I know, and we talked about it before. I don't hate this game at all. I mean, it's one that I would like to play again. Had one bad experience playing at Cabin Con, but the other plays have been fun. So, yeah, I think it's a good game.
I love it. It's a blast. It's my number 14, and it is well deserving of that spot.
Well, my number 13 is a game designed by Vladimir Suchy. Seems like we've talked a lot about his games lately. It is published by Rio Grande Games, and this is Underwater Cities. So Underwater Cities, you are basically building out an underwater city. It is a worker placement game. You have 3 workers that are these little tiles that you're going to place out on the board. The worker spaces are color-coded, so they're either red, yellow, or green. You also have a hand of cards. So you have 3 cards that you are playing for each turn as well. The cool thing about this game, and I think it's the most interesting mechanic, it's funny, the Suhi games always have something in them that's very unique and different from any other game, and this game is no exception. So on your turn, you will play a card, and it's either a red, yellow, or green card. And then you're going to place your worker on one of these spaces. If you can match the color of your card to the color of the worker space, you get to do the action of that card. If you don't, then you just discard that card. And you can do those actions in any order you would like. So if you match, you can do the card action and then the board action, or you could do it vice versa. And that is a very important decision at times because the card you play can give you the resources you need to do that action, or the board action can give you the resources to do that card. That makes for some really interesting decisions because you may want to go to an action space that's yellow and you don't have any yellow cards. And you can hold off a little bit, but that action space may not be available later, and you may not draw a yellow card in your next draw. So that decision of what you're going to do is a super interesting decision. There's scoring cards, there's endgame scoring cards. So there's the chance to kind of build toward your strategy, your endgame strategy. There's cards that score in the middle of the game. That's kind of a race to meet those criteria and get those, scoring cards in the middle of the game. It lasts over 10 rounds. It's a little bit of a longer game. I think it's 40 minutes per player. There's an expansion that came out that it's like the Prelude expansion for Terraforming Mars that cuts out the first round and gives everybody kind of a head start on some of the resources. Plus it adds these player boards that are just incredible. It's like this triple layer player boards that have recessed playing areas. You can flip them over. They're double-sided. Just really cool upgrade for the game. I don't know. It's a game that I enjoy playing. Tough to get to the table because it's so long, but it's every time I get it out, it's a lot of fun.
I would like to play it with that expansion. This came very close to being in my top 30. The length of the play kept it from being in the top 30. But if we could play with that expansion, I think that might change my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it cuts out that first round. And like I said, gives a little bit of a kickstart on some resources, just like Prelude does for Terraforming Mars. And I think it definitely benefits to a shorter playtime because it is a little bit longer, but it's a lot of fun.
This is a game like Teotihuacan or Clans of Caledonia in which I've only played the digital version of the game. And
on Yucata, I think.
Yeah, on Yucata I've played.
Oh, yeah, it is on Yucata.
And I have a game going now, which is awesome.
And I liked it, but I didn't quite fully grasp everything about it. And so because of that, I feel like I suffer from gaining the full experience of it, which is why it probably has never come close to this top 30 list for me, is just because I still want to play it on the table, get that full experience, understand it, see how the pieces interact with each other a little bit more clearly.
There's a lot to this game, but really when you learn it, it's very straightforward. And it's one of the best rule books that I've ever read. It is laid out so well. I was like, when I was reading through it, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And you notice the difference when you play a lot of games, the difference between a good rule book and a terrible rule book. And this one is definitely a good rule book. So
nice.
It's a good one.
You got a lot of upgraded bits for this one too, right?
Oh yeah. I got the Geek Up bit set, I think that's what it's called, from BGG. So that definitely enhances the play on the table. So that is my number 13, Underwater Cities.
My number 13 is a game that we've heard
This
of.
is one of my
podcast.
favorite games of all time.
I play this every day.
A game that is talked about a lot because nobody knows about anything about the game except for me. It's Sidereal Confluence.
Like, I'll play this anytime Bifurcation shows up.
Let me. I have Bifurcation. I have it.
It's bifurcation.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler.
Right,
Bifurcation.
Right. I have the expansion. I'm ready to play this game with you guys. But let me tell you, I've called it Sidereal Confluence, but that's disingenuous. The full title of this game is Sidereal Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysian Quadrant.
Whoa.
What?
That's a terrible name.
This is a game designed by Tausetti Diekman and published by WizKids. It plays at 4 to 9 players. You can't play less than 4 players. And the reason for that is because it is trading and negotiation, and it requires trading and negotiation. The theme behind this game is that you are part of a federation of alien races. As such, you each have different contributions that you can add to this federation, and you contribute by supporting one another. So in the game, what you're doing is each player is a unique race, and each race has asymmetrical abilities and technologies and things like that. So all of your components are different and work differently slightly than other players. So you have to know what those are. But then the cool thing is that any player can use or interact with any piece that is in the game. So I can be a different race than Tyler and still utilize his technologies, his components, whatever, if he chooses to trade with me. Each round, there is a trading phase during which you are sitting there and trying to come up with ways to work with others and get the resources you want and give them resources they need. And the thing about it is that everybody has, in the next phase, engines that they have to run, and your engines require certain inputs, and you as your base alien race does not have by default the means to accumulate your inputs. So your outputs that you're making from your engines do not typically create the resources you need to then feed your own engine, which is why the trading is necessary in this game, is because you have to work with other people in order for your engines to run and in order for them to work effectively. So you're trying to do that. And then you have what's called the confluence phase, which is during the engine running phase, you get the opportunity to research new technologies and be able to use them. When you're researching these new technologies, it means that you have the ability to create these technologies and utilize them as the only person during that round that can use it. But because you're part of a trade federation, you have agreed to share any technological developments that you do. So at the end of the confluence phase, if you've researched something, it then becomes available for everybody else around the table to be able to play. So you're trying to determine, when do I research certain things and when do I wait to do that so that I can optimally play and use that in a way that it's best for me and less effective for other players. So you're paying attention to what's going on other people's boards, and you're trying to interact with everybody, trade your things. You can trade anything that is in front of you, essentially, resources, technologies, cards, etc. And it ends up being a lot of fun. I love that this game has a equal play time, basically from 4 players to 9 players, because those phases are basically timed phases. So the trade phases is a 10-minute phase, and then running your engine happens simultaneously. So everybody's doing that at the same time, and it ends quickly, and confluence phase is also simultaneous. So it's a very quick playing game for the most part. and it doesn't hurt by adding more people to it. And I really like that for this game. So that's my number 13, Sidereal Confluence.
When are we playing?
You name it, I'll play it.
I'm in. Let's do it.
We've been saying that for months now.
You have.
My number 13 is ranked number 9 overall on BGG. It is Gaia Project. It came out in 2017. It is designed by Jans Drogemuller and Helge Ostertag. And they are the designers of a game that you may have heard of called Terra Mystica. This is Space Terra Mystica. It is my preferred version of this game, which is interesting because normally I would gravitate towards a fantasy adventure theme like Terra Mystica. In this case, I'm going space. This game is it's also similar to Clans of Caledonia. You put out a couple of starting mines. There's very unique factions that have different abilities, and they start out with different resources in some cases. And it's just it's one of those games where you start out in just a couple locations. You're trying to expand across space to, I think there's 7 or 8 different planet types. You can terraform planets, and some planets are more similar to your home planet type, and so they don't cost as much ore to terraform. There's the main thing that I like more about this than I do Terra Mystica is the different tracks. They're very thematic and they give different rewards, whereas Terra Mystica does not have that. But basically, just like Clans, just like Terra Mystica, there's end of round scoring, there's end of game scoring bonuses. You're trying to expand as much as you possibly can across space. There are limited resources available. You start out with being able to do very little during the first round of the game. I think it's played over 5 or 6 rounds. I can't remember. I've actually got a game with played a couple games with guys from our Discord channel, Harame and Pipes Galore and Depth Perception played in the first one and then didn't play in the next one. But we've got a game going right now, and I know it's maybe not as well received in this group, and so that's why I'm happy that I got guys to play it with on Board Game Arena.
You say it's not very well received by this group, and I think that's not a completely untrue statement. Terra Mystica is my preferred version of this game, and it barely doesn't make my top 30 list. I like it a lot, and I think it's a great game. I would even concede that Gaia Project is probably the better game, but I've played far more Terra Mystica than I've played Gaia Project.
You're more familiar with the factions.
I'm more familiar with Terra Mystica than Gaia Project. I would love to play more Gaia Project. Again, it's one of those games that if you're not familiar on BGA, like I'm familiar, but there's just the tiny nuance rules about
the tracks are different.
The tracks and the researching, and then the doing the Gaia projects themselves is different than Terra Mystica, and so not knowing those nuance difference very thoroughly, it puts me at a disadvantage that I just don't end up enjoying the game on BGA. Again, I want to play this one on the table more because it's one that I would love to start playing on BGA more, but I first want to make sure I can fully grok it on the table before experiencing it.
It's right above Kevin. Let's play it. In this game, you're moving power from different stages, from stage 1 to 2 and then to 3, where you can use it and you can buy rewards with it. And those are 1 space rewards each round. So if someone else takes all the credits and you need credits and they go to the credit spot that gives them 7, you're out of luck. But it's also fun because you can kind of see, hey, I could use credits, and I can see that Tyson has no credits, but a ton of ore. So he's probably going to go for that spot. I'm going to take that spot before he does. So there is a little bit of take that if you're looking for it. But I love the decisions in this game. I love trying to figure out how to make things click and just work well with the faction that you start out with. Last game that I played, I had an awesome game. This game, we're a couple rounds into it, and I am struggling. Like, I am having a hard time expanding. I'm having a hard time finding the resources that I need, and it makes for some great decisions, and I really enjoy it every time I play this game, even the times that I get blown out, because the decisions are so fun.
Yeah, I don't know which one I like better. I've played more Terra Mystica.
Do you like either of them?
Yeah, I do. I don't hate the games. It's not in my top 30, but
Yeah.
I'd play it. I like the space theme better than the fantasy theme.
Which is what you generally gravitate.
Yeah,
I gravitate towards the space theme. Right?
Yep, I do. I gravitate towards the space theme, and man, it would look good on my space mat. Now that I think about it, hey, let's play it.
Yeah,
let's get it out. Yeah. So I think I don't know which one I like better, but it's one that I'd like to explore some more for sure. It's a good game.
So that's my number 13, Gaia Project.
So my number 12 is a game that has already been mentioned, and I think it was number 27 on Tyson's list, and that is Railways of the World. So we've talked a lot about Railways of the World already. We actually did a feature review. I'm not going to talk about how the game plays at all, but I do want to mention a few things that I really enjoy about the game. So it's a pick up and deliver game, and each city has a different tile placed on it for every game, and they're different colors, and you're trying to deliver colored goods to that colored city. So I love at the beginning of the game when the game's all set up and you study the board and you formulate a strategy that you want to follow for the game. And then you try and execute that strategy. I'm terrible at it. I think I maybe have won this. Yeah, I think I won this game maybe one time. But I love that process of saying, like, okay, there's these bonus cards that come out. I'm going to try and get that bonus card first. I'm going to go to this area over here and try to expand. And usually Tyson's in my way, or Tyler. It's just that whole process is really fun and really cool. Another thing that I like about the game is the table presence is just incredible. It's awesome. I love at the end of the game, you look at the board and you see all the tracks and all the trains on the board. And it's just really cool and really satisfying to play the game and then see the end result of that game. I think games where you build something are really cool. And this is a game where I feel like I'm building something. And even if I don't win the game, I have a cool network of trains.
You see your impact.
Yeah, I've seen that I've done something cool, and I have this whole network that is kind of fun and satisfying. So I like Railways of the World. It has a bunch of different expansions to it. I backed the most recent Kickstarter and got Railways of Sweden, which I haven't played yet. And it's one that I'm looking forward to playing. It's one that's not on BGA yet.
I know. We need to play that one on the table.
Yeah, because most of them are on BGA, which has been a lot of fun exploring the different maps there.
I was going to say, this is another game that was like right there in my 30s. I think I got a little BGA fatigue with this one. I think it would benefit to get back to the table. And, Railways of Sweden, we should do that for sure, because I would love to play this on the table again, maybe rekindle, get some fire going again for this game, and then maybe get back to playing it on Board Game Arena.
I still want to play it on Board Game Arena after you just mentioning this. I want to play some more of.
We should get some games going. Okay, so we got Sidereal Confluence. We got to play Gaia Project. We got Railways. We got a lot of
Dwellings.
Dwellings.
Nemesis.
It's funny. We start talking about all these games. It's like, man, yeah, we should get that played again. So, we got
we
got a big backlog.
I could not buy a game for like 5 years and
still be perfectly content with what
and entertained and
yeah, exactly.
And that's not even including like your guys' collections, right? Like just with my own collection, I could be entertained for years with.
But everybody has their own collection. I mean, Dan, Ben. Mark doesn't have very many games, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But there's so many games between
our group.
Our group. It's just insane. So, but that's my number 12, Railways of the World.
Well, and speaking of having so many games between our groups, there are even games that we all have copies of. And the game that is my number 12 is a game that we all have a copy of and is on Board Game Arena. So we've gotten lots of plays of this one. It's already been talked about on Tyler's list. He ranked this one number 22 on his list. And for me, it's my 12. It's Tapestry. I won't go into this one too in depth, seeing as we've talked about this and we've talked about it a lot. I will say that I have played this game probably more than almost any other game that I own. I've got more plays of it, and I've loved it every time. There are definitely flaws with this game. We've gone over those. We've talked about that in last episode with Tyler's discussion. I understand those flaws, and yet I'm still drawn to this game. I will still play it. I have on BGA a tournament. I think it's called the Longest Tournament or something to that effect. And
that should be our tournament.
Right. When I think the game is over, though, I get a new Tapestry game started, and I play another one. So I am never not playing Tapestry, it seems. Now I have suffered some BGA fatigue as well on this because I've played so much of it that I've had to stop playing 4 games at the same time. So I only have one going at a time now. But I love this game, and I could see it falling down on the list based off of the fact that I've just played it a ton, and it does have flaws, and we know that, but I still love this game. I think it's great. I think it's accessible. I think it's fun to play. Tapestry, my number 12.
So my number 12 is actually also a Stonemaier game, like Tyson's number 12. This is designed by Jamie Stegmaier. The artist is Jakob Rosalski, and this game came out in 2016. It is Scythe. It is by far my favorite Stonemaier game. This game is just absolutely incredible. It's an area control game where you are deploying workers and mechs, and you're trying to kind of take control of the board. You have a leader. Your mechs have different abilities, and they're varied slightly between other players' factions. Each faction has a unique ability. We've played this game a ton. There is some battling, and I like how the battling is done, but more often than not, it's just the threat of battle and the threat of losing resources or losing. You have to have your defenses up, otherwise you're going to get run over. But more often than not, if you have your defenses up, there's not a lot of battling that takes place in this game. I don't know. I have so many memories of playing this game that just make me happy. It's such a good game. I love that you have so on your turn, basically you have a player board that has columns of different actions, and there's a top row of actions and a bottom row of actions, and you generally have to pick a different action than you did from your previous turn. It might be like collecting resources or moving or trading or whatever. But then if you if you have the right resources, you can buy the bottom row action and get a mech out or build a building or do whatever. And so you're really trying to maximize those turns where you are able to use both the top row and the bottom row. You're working towards getting 6 of the possible goals that are available, and then the game end is triggered. It's a beautiful game. It will always be in my collection, and I would never turn down playing this game. I played it again a month or 2 ago and got it to the table, and it was just so much fun. We played with the what are the cards called? The
Encounters?
Encounter cards.
The
encounter
encounter
deck.
cards.
Those are really swingy.
They're awesome. They are really swingy, but if you play with, there's a promo set that you can buy, or an extra set that you can buy of encounter cards, and those things are
even crazier.
Yes. Like I had one that let me pick a factory card in the center of the map, right? And then destroy the rest of the factory cards so nobody else could get them.
Oh, jeez.
and I had some other really powerful ones. And
That's cool.
Almost to the point where I was like, I don't know if I would play. I don't know if I would play with this deck again. If I did, I would definitely mix it in with the original deck, I think.
Yeah, I remember we had a game at my house we were playing, and we played with the new encounter cards. And I got an encounter card that was just awesome. And I was able to maximize that card, and it really gave me an advantage. So some of those are a little much, but but they're fun. They're fun to play with.
Aside from having just played it a ton, and maybe that's why it's dropped a little, one thing that I don't necessarily love about this game is the game goes further along. You really, near the end of the game, whether you're going to trigger it the end of the game or not, you just are trying to spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the same at the end of every game. The first half of the game, you're trying all kinds of different things. But in that those last few turns, it's like, how can I spread out as much as possible? Yeah. Because the scoring is weighted pretty heavily on who controls the most hexes. And there's other things that you score, obviously, but I think that's a slight ding for me, and that's a nitpick ding. I think
you're right, but I think the reason why it works though is that in order to be able to expand and increase your coverage, is that you have to focus on the rest of the stuff in the game as well. So even though that is a pretty prescribed method towards the end of the game, I think that it works because if you've been playing your game right up till that point, you are able to do that. But if you haven't been playing as efficiently, you're not able to do that as well.
I also think playing this with the experienced players, we've played this in our group a ton. Playing this with the experienced players, everybody kind of plays the same.
You're trying to maximize your top and bottom reactions. That's what it comes down to, right? And get your engine going as quickly as possible.
Right.
So yeah, that's what.
But at a certain point, depending on what faction you have, you're kind of doing the same thing every game in a way. I don't know. It does. Yeah. It doesn't vary as much from game to game to game once you are playing with people who have played it a lot.
There's slight variation, like you said, in the factions. Like your play style is going to vary slightly based off of the faction you're playing. But yeah, ultimately.
Yeah, and if I ever get the Nordic faction, I'm forfeiting. Not really, but
have you ever won with that faction?
I don't know. I think I have. But it might have been a game with Logan. But
I was going to say it was the game I won was with some pretty inexperienced people, and I won with it, and I used to use the achievement sheet on my copy very closely, and I did it it was good. But yeah, it's not easy to win with that faction.
But they're such good swimmers.
They are.
So like I said, this game is incredible. I would never turn it down. It's a beautiful game. It's really fun. I've had tons of great memories and moments from it, but it's barely eked out of my top 10, I guess.
Yeah. This is the first game that I got that I felt was like an epic game.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I got the bigger board. Yep. It was just massive on the table. I got upgraded, resources and coins, and I got coins that were like blue and red. And it's like the first game I really got into like upgrading my games. And it was, I've got great memories of this one. It's great.
Agreed. Same.
So that's my number 12, Scythe.
So my number 11 has already been on someone else's list. So this was 25 on Tyler's list, and that is Res Arcana. So this is the last game on my list that was designed by Tom Lehman.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the other guy that did
No.
for the Galaxy.
No, this is the last one on the list that designed by Tom Lehman. And the publisher for this one is Sandcastle Games. So Tyler's already talked about this one, and we had a good discussion about it in the last episode. So I'm not going to really talk about how it plays, but I'll talk about a few things that I like about it. So in this game, you have 8 cards, and that is it. And I think I mentioned before, you first play the game and, you're like, well, this can't be a game, right? It's got 8 cards. What am I going to do with 8 cards? You have 3 to start off and you draw 1 additional card at the end of every round. But I love first of all, I love the draft. If you play with the draft variant, I think that's the best way to play. I love the fact that you're drafting cards, and as you're drafting cards, you're formulating your strategy and what you're going to try to do in that game. And there's a bunch of different strategies to follow. And then trying to execute that strategy and seeing if you can do it better than everybody else. That's just such a fun process. I also like playing with just getting 8 cards and then trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do with those 8 cards. That's also a fun strategy. Sometimes you get good cards, sometimes you don't, but there's always moments in this game, at least for me, where all of a sudden something clicks and you're like, I can make this work and I can be competitive. May not win, but at least I can get up there close, maybe get 7 or 8 points, It's just a fun process. It's a great engine builder. What you can do with those few cards, just blows me away. And there's been so many experiences where we played and it's just been amazing. I remember one time on BGA we played and there was this crazy combination that the 3 of us had. I think it was me, Tyler, and Mark. And like somebody had 150 blue resources and another person had like almost 200 red or something crazy like that. It was just the way the cards came out just escalated the resources like you wouldn't believe. And it was just
like
it was
never before.
Yeah, like never. And I don't think that's ever happened again. But that combination was just really kind of fun to experience.
It was starting to happen in this last game that we played, but it didn't materialize for some people.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. I was gonna get there and I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome, it's gonna work perfectly. And I had like 3 points or something, and Kevin had like maybe 1 or 2 points, and then you ended the game.
So everybody else passed.
Yeah. And I knew that if I passed, this would happen, but I was like, oh, I have to.
I didn't have the Philosopher's Stone, but I had the other one that I think it's Athenor. And basically, you build up fire, Elon, or whatever on your card, and then eventually you can trade a bunch of resources for gold. Yeah. And I had one of the cards that was giving me, red for the amount of whoever had the most black, right? Okay. And so like I built up, I had like 26 red, or no, it was 20, and I had 0 or 1 points in this round, and I traded them all for gold using Athenor, and then I just started buying monuments, and everybody passed eventually, and I was like, sweet, I'm going to end this game, and they don't even get another round. Like that's fun.
That is fun.
Well, and I was fun.
Do you know what? I forgot about that game. Sometimes BGA games end, and I don't go back and check. I usually do go back and check and see, but sometimes I don't. I don't even think I knew that game was over. Well done, Tyler.
That's awesome, though. That's fun, though, right?
Yeah,
like
that's cool.
when it lines up perfectly.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it's an early round. Yeah. I had the ability where I could refresh a card, so it didn't even take me 3 rounds to get all the resources on the card that I needed. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I would have caught up if I had one more round in that game. It just didn't happen.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
It's a great one to play on Board Game Arena. I love that it's on there.
Yep, it is. It's a great game. So that is my number 11, Res Arcana.
So my number 11 is a game this is a new to me game this year, and it's just the game I've played the most out of any other game this year. It's Stars of Akarios. It's designed by Brendan McCaskill and Jonathan Thwaites, and it's published by Games, or Out of My Mind Games. And this is a game that I've talked a little bit about already. The easiest comparison to understand what this game is, and when I make this comparison, if you've played these games, you'll basically know this game. The easiest comparison is this is Gloomhaven meets Seventh Continent. It's putting those two systems together where it's a dungeon crawl type of an experience where you're trying to go through a scenario narrative driven campaign, go through, explore, experience new things, upgrade your individual, while then also going to planets and other locations where you can explore a map, card map, a la Seventh Continent. I've played this game a lot this year, and I'm really, I need to play it more because I haven't even scratched the surface of completing this campaign. There are tons of scenarios. There's a lot to like about this game. I really love that this game has this combat system that you can have different scenarios where you're doing space combat, or you're doing ground combat, or you're doing space exploration. So there's different types of things that are going on, and I really like that it changes it up. So like Gloomhaven, it was very monotonous at times. I played through all of Gloomhaven, and the scenarios kind of got stale after a while. It was still a lot of fun, but like you knew what to expect out of those scenarios. Because of the diversity and what you can do in this game, there's more, I think, to explore and to experience. But I really like the space combat because we've talked about it. We just talked about it earlier. Kevin, you like space theme more. I think I lean a little bit more towards space theme, especially in gameplay. And I really like it. And this game was a little bit more appealing thematically to me, especially because the combat positioning matters more, as opposed to Gloomhaven. Flanking somebody didn't necessarily matter, but in this game, being able to get in behind somebody is going to be better. It's like dogfighting, and it's really kind of exciting. Other people have also said that this game is Gloomhaven 7th Continent plus X-Wing. So if you're familiar with the X-Wing combat system, you're getting some of that experience here, but it's really this dice allocation kind of experience going on your player board, and this upgrading. I like this game a lot. I'd love to play this more. I've only played it with other people one time, and the rest of my plays have been solo plays, and I'd love to get this played with more people so that I could explore more and have more reasons to bring this back to the table and play it more. But that's my number 11, Stars of Akarios.
So my number 11 is Acquire, and this game originally came out in 1964. It is designed by the late and great Sid Saxon, originally published by 3M. I think it's passed through to many different publishers, Avalon Hill, Hasbro at one point, I think. I don't know. I have some old 1960-something copies of this game, a couple of them. I love this game. It is by far the game that influenced me most to become a board game player of all time, easily. We used to play this growing up. It is the game of high finance. It's received differently in my family. Part of my family hates it, and part of my family loves it. But basically, in this game, it's a tile laying game that you are placing tiles out on this grid. So on your turn, you play one tile, and then you might buy stock in any of the 7 hotel chains that are available, and then you draw a tile and your turn's over. However, when you play a tile, you might be creating a new hotel by placing a tile adjacent to another tile or multiple tiles, or you might be merging 2 or more hotels, which bonuses are given when hotels are merged for the players who have the most stock in that hotel. You have choices of what to do with your stock. You can hang on to it for the next time that hotel chain shows up on the board. You can trade it 2 for 1 for the hotel it merged into, or you can sell your stock for cash, and maybe you've increased the value of that stock by growing the hotel since when you originally purchased the stock. Just amazing decisions. I love this game. It just makes me happy to think about it, and so many great memories of playing this. It's one of my favorites of all time. That is number 11, Acquire.
Surprised this isn't in your top 10.
Yeah, there's just so many good games. it holds up.
It's the definition of a classic. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if there is, we joke about how games that are 5-10 years old in the board game world can be classics. Well, this game is what you said, 1964 was the original publication. Sid Saxon created, I think, a lot of the reason why modern board gaming exists, and this is one of those reasons. I think if you haven't had an experience with this game, it's worth seeking out and trying it. But it's fantastic.
It doesn't even break the top 300 on BGG. I do laugh because like in the URL it shows the number and it's like board game /5/acquire. It's the 5th entry in the board game database.
Oh my gosh!
Not that it's the 5th oldest game, but it was the 5th game that got entered in.
Put in. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think it holds up for the most part. There's so many good games, and it's right on the cusp of my top 10. Maybe the next time we do this, it'll be higher up.
That's the thing with these top 10 lists or top 30 lists is there are so many good games out there, and there are reasons for all these games to be on those lists. Like we've talked about several times how some of the games are lower on our list because we've played them so much, right? Like, and that's because there's so much new content coming out. It's a good time to be a board gamer right now. There's plenty of content, lots of fun stuff to engage with.
Yeah, and depending on when you make your list, you're going to be excited about some games more than others. And
absolutely.
And then a few weeks down the road, maybe you cool on that game. So that's what's fun about redoing these lists from time to time and seeing where things fall. It's like, wait a minute, this was 15 last year, but it's not even in my top 30 this year. You know, it's cool to do this exercise.
And I suspect there will be some of that.
I agree.
I mean, I know for me, even Tapestry, like a year ago was in my top 10 and now it's 22. So
right. Even last episode when you said, why is this in my top 30? You know? Right. As you start talking about it, you know,
which is funny.
That's funny.
So I think this wraps up part 2 of our top 30 games of all time. This was games 11 through 20. And in our next episode, we'll finish it up with our top 1 through 10 games of all time. There might be a little more crossover in that episode, but I'm excited. I've enjoyed talking about all these games, and like we've said, you know, it just makes me want to play all these games right now. Like,
That's exactly the sentiment I have. As I'm walking away from this thinking, why aren't we playing these games more?
Yeah, we need to stop buying new games.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, who are you kidding? That's not going to happen. We're always going to buy new games, right? Are you making an announcement?
Hey, I have
Tyler.
No, I declared like a month ago in Discord that I was done buying.
Yeah, and then how many have you bought since then?
0.
Good.
0.
How many Kickstarters have you backed?
Yeah, in the past year?
Since that declaration.
No, 0. 0.
I had
already backed it. That was already.
But it wasn't charged.
It's all about it.
Doesn't matter. I had already backed it.
It's all about timing.
Yeah. Hey, I'm
Let
going
the
strong.
caveats roll in.
Logan's not going to listen to this, or he usually listens to him delayed, so I'm just going to say it now. But
Christmas presents.
So I got. My wife told me the other day, her parents are they're like, hey, go spend this amount of money on games for Logan for Christmas. And I was like, sweet.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want that experience.
So I get to do that, and I'm still not buying the games, but I get to take advantage of some sales and hunt for some cool games that he'll love. And
you get
I get my fix. Yeah. So I'm excited about that.
And you still get to play these games. He's still, still living here. So
yeah.
Loopholes again.
No, that's not a loophole. I'm not spending any money on games for me.
You're spending money. It's not
but it's not my
money.
Not my money and not for me.
Okay.
Not a loophole.
I accept that. That's good.
Just like you didn't cheat earlier by using the whole pandemic system as one of your slots.
Again, it's our podcast. So we can do whatever the crap we want.
Yeah, but I will say, since I made the declaration a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever in Discord that I'm done buying, I have not.
I feel like that happened last year
bought a
too,
game.
and then you ended up.
Oh, yeah.
No,
it
it happens 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah, but I'm really truly getting to the point where it's like I would rather just upgrade some of the games I have,
Yeah.
I feel that way.
cull some of my collection, and be way more selective about what I add to my collection in the future.
I'm running out of room. It's
Yep, that's my problem too.
I need another shelf, which I could fit another shelf in my game room, but I don't think I want to.
We played at your house the other night, and I was like, "Oh, don't shift my chair that way. I'll bump a bunch of games that
Well,
are
I
on
had
your floor."
I had Ox stacked up.
That could kill you if that fell over on you.
I know.
The act of the boxes falling over wouldn't kill me. It's the damage to the boxes and the retribution from Kevin.
So I would probably kill you. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Which, fair enough. I mean,
Yeah,
I feel
right.
the same way about my games.
Yeah,
so,
if I did that to your games, there'd be something coming back my way. So
yeah. So, yeah, that wraps up this episode. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and the last episode. We got one more. Hopefully, you'll enjoy that one too. And if not, then don't give up on us, because we'll be back with our normal formats of feature reviews and discussions and top 5 lists and much shorter lists in the future.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
So yeah, thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Longest Turn Board Gaming Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you want more Longest Turn in your life, please check us out on Instagram. Also, be sure to check us out on Board Game Geek, where you can join our guild, Guild 3947, and check out our blog, where we post all our show notes and occasionally post more detailed reviews. If that's not enough for you, we have a Discord server. If you want to play a game with us on Board Game Arena, join our Board Game Arena group, The Longest Turn. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Tot ziens.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Should be on my list.
Why
somewhere.
it's number 18 for me. Number 18 for me. Number 18 for me. That's Rajas of the Ganges.
I think you mean number 18, but
That's why it's number 18 for me. What did I say?
8, I believe.
Why do I do that all the time?
Really? I didn't catch it.
I could have misheard, but I thought I heard 8.
Yeah. All right. So my number 17. Okay. So my number.
Are you sure?
That was I was whistling, I think, in the middle of what I was
This is Jeopardy with
I know.
And maybe it exists somewhere else, but maybe it exists.
For me, I think it's well deserving of my number 13.
14.
I think it's well deserving of my number 14.